You know that moment when a room goes quiet in your head, even though the music's still playing? Yeah, that was me, last Friday, right around the time she leaned over the balcony with him, laughing at something I never heard. The lights from the ballroom chandelier made it look like snow was falling inside, but it wasn't snow. It was just crystalline lies. I stood by the damn chocolate fountain, holding a plate with a half-melted marshmallow and a pretzel stick, pretending I was deciding what to dip next like my life wasn't splitting open in 4K. She did that smile again, the one she used to do to me. With her chin slightly tilted, lips parted, eyes squinting just enough to look genuine, but never too much to create laugh lines. Like she was saving her skin for someone younger. Someone like Ash. His name was Ashford, but everyone called him Ash. The kind of man who calls his cologne heritage and actually means it. I hated him instantly. Rosalie had known him for what, 2 months? They met during some psych grant conference in Boise that she swore was super boring. Now they were sipping gold-rimmed champagne on the second-floor gallery, close enough that his cuff brushed the silk on her waist. I wasn't supposed to be here. She told me I'd hate this kind of thing. And yet, 2 hours ago, I found an invitation in the trash under a still-warm hair straightener. My name had been crossed out with a thin black line. Her name was untouched. I put on the suit I wore to my cousin's funeral and showed up anyway. Call it insecurity. Call it desperation. But I needed to see if I was crazy. Spoiler, I wasn't. Rosalie didn't see me when I arrived, which gave me about 25 minutes to walk around like a rejected waiter, trying to figure out if the woman I married was emotionally cheating, physically cheating, or inventing a new category of betrayal that hadn't been written yet. The ballroom had too many mirrors. Everywhere I looked, there I was, sweaty, overdressed, blinking like a deer caught in a room full of better men. She touched his lapel. She laughed with her whole body. She drank her second glass too fast. I was still holding a napkin. That's when I stopped breathing for about 10 seconds. I'm not being dramatic. My body just forgot how. Because Ash put his hand on the small of her back and whispered something into her hair. And she didn't flinch. That's when I knew. I was a memory she hadn't deleted yet. A screen she forgot to close. I was a wedding band she stopped twisting on her finger months ago, but hadn't gotten around to removing. Not because of love. Because of laziness. I left the chocolate fountain and walked through the crowd like I belonged there. People made space for me. Maybe they saw it in my eyes. The storm, the break, the man unraveling under a tie clip. I didn't even think. No script. No plan. I walked up to them mid-giggle. Rosalie froze when she saw me. Ash didn't. Ash smirked like he'd just been dealt a royal flush and couldn't wait to show me his hand. I nodded at both of them. Said one line. So this is where you buried us. She blinked. Ash's smirk wavered. I didn't wait for an answer. I just turned, walked downstairs, and did what I should have done a year ago. I started changing everything. I didn't go home. Not at first. After walking out of that ballroom, I just drove. Nowhere in particular. Just far enough that the streetlights looked foreign and my GPS stopped recognizing local coffee shops. The kind of drive where you start thinking stupid things like, what if I just kept going? Like I'm in a movie and someone in a scarf will give me a new identity at the next gas station. I parked outside an abandoned furniture store, turned off the engine, and just sat in the dark. There was this blinking voicemail light on my dashboard screen. It started blinking about 20 minutes after I left. I didn't play it. Not yet. Because I already knew what it would be. Rosalie, pretending to be confused. Where did you go? Are you okay? You left your jacket. Always pretending the sky isn't falling while brushing ash off her sleeves. It's wild how the human brain rewrites history in real time. I started remembering all the signs I dismissed. The Tuesday night client calls that always made her walk into another room. The sudden obsession with gym leggings despite hating yoga. The way she never posted pictures of us anymore. Only filtered shots of herself holding wine in places I never got invited to. I sat there, watching my reflection in the window, and I looked exactly how I felt. Invisible. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I hit play. It wasn't Rosalie. It was our home phone's answering machine. One of those old digital ones we hadn't used in years, but still kept plugged in near the kitchen in case her dad called. The message had been recorded through it. I recognized the voice. It was hers. A voice memo she must have accidentally triggered while I was at the ball. Or so I thought. But it wasn't accidental. She was laughing. In the background, music played faintly, and glasses clinked. Then came her voice, whispering too close to the mic. No, no, stop. He doesn't suspect anything. He's sweet. Like, pathetic sweet, you know? The kind who still opens car doors and thinks that means something. Pause. Laughter. A male voice, Ashes? Couldn't be sure, low and cocky. You gonna tell him eventually? What? And ruin the mystery, she answered, giggling again. Besides, he might grow a spine and leave. Then where would I get my guilt-free stability? I sat frozen, completely still, as if breathing too hard would make it worse. My wife, talking about me like I was a broken vending machine that still occasionally gave her snacks. I should have cried, or screamed, or thrown something. But all I felt was dry, like my emotions had gone on strike and left me behind with only the echo of her voice replaying in my skull. I didn't go home until morning. When I walked in, she was at the kitchen counter, scrolling her phone like nothing happened. Hair curled, perfect bathrobe, coffee steam rising like everything was normal. She looked up and smiled. Oh hey, you left without saying anything last night. Everything okay? She didn't know about the voicemail. Not yet. I gave her the same smile I gave my students when they swore they did the homework but left it on the bus. Yeah, I said. Everything's great. And then I kissed her forehead, just long enough to leave her unsure. That day, I didn't go to work. That day, I called in sick and started digging. I opened accounts I hadn't looked at in years. Found a few credit card statements that didn't match her usual spending habits. Discovered a Dropbox folder tied to an old shared email address we hadn't used since our honeymoon. The folder was called Conference Photos. But none of the pictures were from Boise. None of them were even PG. That's when I knew this wasn't new. Ash wasn't the first. He was just the latest. But I was going to be the last surprise. Not her. She still doesn't know I found the folder. That alone gives me more power than I've had in years. While Rosalie was curled on the couch later that night pretending to read a book, I sat in the den with the lights dimmed, my laptop casting blue shadows across the walls like ghosts. Her ghosts. I stared at the photos like they were crime scene evidence. Each one time-stamped. Geotagged. Proof of betrayal wrapped in smiles and hotel robes. There was one image I kept coming back to. Not because it was explicit, it wasn't. No, what ruined me was how happy she looked. She was laughing, wrapped in a hotel towel, holding someone else's shirt in her lap like it was a trophy. She looked light, effortless, free. I've never seen her look that way with me. I used to think I was the reason she smiled like that during our early years. Turns out I may have just been the mirror reflecting someone else's spark. And now that the mirror was cracked, she didn't bother to pretend. I made copies of everything. Stored them on 3 separate drives, one encrypted, one on the cloud, and one hidden in the lining of my briefcase. I don't know what I was preparing for, but my gut said this wasn't going to end with a quiet conversation over tea. The next morning, I started testing her. Subtle things. I asked her how the Boise conference went. She said it was dull again. She didn't blink. I mentioned Ash's name, casually, while reading an article on my phone. She tensed, but only slightly. Like her body, remembered something her brain hadn't prepared for. I started watching her the way she used to watch her patients, studying every eye twitch, every pause, every too fast response. And then came the moment I couldn't prepare for. She left her laptop open on the dining table. Not unlocked. No, I'm not that lucky. But the screen displayed the folder path, clients, temp, session logs. That's what caught my eye. Session logs. She was a psychologist. She saw patients. She took notes. But she never stored anything labeled that way before. I waited until she went upstairs for a shower. I slid into the chair, heart pounding like I was robbing a bank. I didn't guess her password. I didn't have to. She used the same sticky note trick she always told me was temporary. Behind the monitor, her pet's birthday and the name of her first stuffed animal. Violet 1992. I typed it in. I was in. Inside the session logs folder were dozens of recordings. Voice files. Notes. Audio snippets. Most were work-related, real patients, raw and heartbreaking. But one folder, unlabeled, had 5 files. Each one named with only a date. The first one was 2 weeks after the Boise trip. I clicked. Her voice. Intimate. Whispering. But not in a clinical tone. So, I told him I was tired. I just needed a weekend to myself. He believed me. Again, it's getting easier. I don't even feel bad anymore. Then silence. Then a man's voice, smug and close. Maybe he likes being lied to. Some guys are into that. Rosalie laughed. The same laugh from the balcony. I felt my throat tighten. My hands clenched so hard the mouse creaked. This wasn't just infidelity. This was sport. She was documenting it like a case study. As if I was some social experiment and learned helplessness. As if I wasn't a husband, but a control variable. I copied the folder. Then I did something I didn't think I'd do. I recorded over one of the blank audio files with my own voice. Calm. Slow. Rosalie, I know. I've known. You've been collecting pieces of me like I'm some exhibit. But here's the twist. You're not the only one documenting. You should ask Ash why he's been avoiding you lately. Or check your phone bill. Or maybe just ask me what comes next. Because I've stopped reacting. I've started planning. I renamed the file. Listen to this one alone. Wave. Then I closed the laptop. Wiped the prints. Straightened the chair. And I waited. Waited for the moment she'd open that file. Because now, she wasn't the only one conducting the experiment. She still hasn't opened the audio file. It sits there like a landmine in her drive. Quiet. Waiting. I see her scroll past it, hover for a second, then keep going. Maybe it's instinct. Maybe it's guilt. Or maybe, just maybe, she knows. Not everything. Just enough to feel the static in the air. Something's different. And that's good. She should feel it. Because for once, I'm not the confused husband waiting for answers. I'm the one creating questions she hasn't thought to ask yet. That week, I started rearranging the house. Not in obvious ways. Just small, almost imperceptible shifts. I moved the mirror in the hallway 2 inches higher. I switched her favorite mug to the back of the cabinet. I placed her hairdryer cord in a loose knot every morning before she woke up. The kind of things that make you pause and think, did I do that? Was it like that before? By Thursday, she was checking her keys twice before leaving. She asked me if the fridge felt louder than usual. She looked in the oven for no reason. That same night, she stood by the window for 10 full minutes, sipping wine and watching the street like she expected something, or someone, to arrive. She never asked if I was okay. She never apologized. But I didn't need either. She wasn't cracking yet. Not the way I wanted. But the pressure was building behind her eyes. Friday, I did something bold. And yeah, maybe it was petty. But I needed to see her flinch. I signed up for a couples therapy session. Just one. With a random therapist she didn't know. Then I printed the appointment confirmation and tucked it between the pages of the book she always left by the bathtub. She didn't find it that night. She found it the next morning. She came into the kitchen holding the printout like it had teeth. Is this some kind of joke? I blinked. What do you mean? This. She tapped the paper. You signed us up for therapy? Without even talking to me? I took a bite of my cereal. It crunched louder than usual in the silence. I just figured you'd be too busy to argue. She stared at me like I'd grown antlers. That's manipulative, Colby. And recording therapy sessions without the other person's consent isn't. I said casually, looking down at my phone. She froze. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. I don't know what you're talking about. I stood up slowly, letting my spoon clink against the bowl. Don't worry. The therapist already rescheduled. He's excited to hear about how you called me pathetic on a voicemail that accidentally synced to my car. That shut her up. She stormed out, slamming the door. 10 seconds later, it opened again. Don't go through my stuff. I don't have to, I said softly. You leave it all lying around. She didn't respond. Just left. Probably to go scream in her car or call someone for backup. But I didn't sit idle. While she was gone, I made my next move. I logged into her LinkedIn. She'd saved her credentials on my old laptop a year ago and never logged out. I updated her headline to something subtle. Currently exploring new opportunities. I didn't post it. Not yet. Just save the draft. Then I messaged 3 of her hospital board contacts from a burner account. Told them there were concerns about how she stored patient files. Anonymously, of course. Just a concerned IT staffer trying to raise internal flags. I didn't want to ruin her career. Not yet. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in, professionally, emotionally, digitally. Every space she thought was hers. I was already inside. But even with all of that, even after the audio, the sabotage, the silence, she still hadn't opened the file. That's when I realized. She knew something was inside, and she was too afraid to hear it. So I gave her one more nudge. I replaced the photo on her phone's lock screen while she slept. I'd backed it up to my cloud months ago, an old picture from our honeymoon in Maine. Her in a sweater, leaning against me, wind in her hair, laughing at something I'd said. That was the last time I remembered her laughing with me instead of at me. I left it there without saying a word, just so every time she checked the time or read a text, she'd have to wonder, what changed? When did I lose this? Is he slipping away? Because he is. Piece by piece, I'm becoming someone she won't recognize. Someone who sees the game, plays it better, and never tells the other player that they're already losing. There's a moment when a manipulator starts realizing they're not the one pulling strings anymore. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not a movie moment with music swelling and a dramatic gasp. No, it happens in the little things. For Rosalie, I think it started with the candle. She has this ridiculous obsession with artisanal candles. There's one she burns every Saturday morning like clockwork, coconut wood and lime, imported from somewhere she couldn't even point to on a map. She buys them from an overpriced boutique where the salespeople call everyone goddess. I didn't throw it out. I just replaced it with the same jar, same wax, different scent. I swapped in a version that smelled like mildew and regret, on purpose. She lit it while folding laundry and immediately gagged. I watched her flinch, check the label twice, shake it like that would make the scent change. Then she glanced over at me. Not accusing, just rattled. That's when I knew she had started to feel unsafe in her own routines. Good. The following Monday, she tried to reclaim control. She booked us a dinner at that obnoxious fusion place she used to rave about with her friends, the one where they serve sushi on lava rocks and call it elevated chaos. She wore the green dress again. That dress. The one she wore at the ball. The one that hugged her too perfectly. I wondered if she wore it to provoke me, or to remind herself she could still control attention. We sat across from each other, silent between sips of overpriced cocktails. She kept brushing her fingers against her necklace, a nervous tic I hadn't seen in years. She finally broke the silence. You've been off. I chewed slowly. How so? Colby, don't play dumb. I gave her a look I hadn't used since our second year of marriage. Somewhere between disinterest and quiet pity. You don't get to say that anymore. That's when her voice got lower, sharper. I don't know what game you're playing, but if you think you can just manipulate me into confessing. I don't need a confession, I interrupted. I have evidence. She went pale. For the first time, really pale. I leaned back, sipped my drink. You should have deleted that voicemail. Her jaw locked. And the Dropbox, I added. Sloppy, really. Especially for someone who once lectured me about digital hygiene. She tried to recover, straightening her spine. You went through my private files? I laughed quietly. You left them in plain sight. Don't flatter yourself. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Just stared at the condensation on her glass like it could melt her problems. I messed up, she finally said. It wasn't sincere. It wasn't even guilt. It was a trial balloon, testing what she could say to end the conversation. I didn't answer. That's when she reached across the table, touched my hand. I still love you. It was the cheapest thing she'd ever said. She used to say, I love you, like a lighthouse. Guiding, sure, unshakable. Now it sounded like a coupon. Expiring soon, maybe already invalid. I slowly pulled my hand away. Not dramatically, just enough. I know, I said. You love me when I'm stupid. You love me when I'm blind. You love me when I'm silent. You don't love me now. We didn't finish dinner. When we got home, she tried to start a fight. Claimed I was violating her privacy, crossing boundaries, becoming unstable. Said she was thinking about taking a break. The irony made me laugh out loud. A break? I asked. From what, being caught? That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. She did. And while she was tossing and turning in that cold bed, I was awake in the master, uploading something new. A short video. Nothing explicit. Nothing even mean. Just a montage I put together from her public posts over the last 3 years. Selfies, conferences, smiles, charity balls, and layered beneath it, her own voice from the voicemail. He doesn't suspect anything. He's sweet. Like, pathetic sweet. I added a text overlay. When loyalty becomes a punchline. I didn't publish it. Not yet. But I set it to schedule. 3 days from now. On her birthday. Why? Because she used to love surprises. She opened it. I know, because the file timestamp changed. Exactly 9:42 p.m. Tuesday night. I was downstairs in the kitchen when it happened, slicing the end off a pomegranate. watching the red drip across the cutting board like something poetic and dramatic and way too on the nose. I didn't hear her scream. I didn't hear anything, really. Just the low hum of the fridge and the crunch of the seeds. But upstairs, she was listening to my voice whispering from her own laptop. You've been collecting pieces of me like I'm some exhibit. But here's the twist. You're not the only one documenting. The silence that followed was like thunder in reverse. She didn't come down right away. When she finally did, her face was white. Not ghost white. Ice white. The kind of white that only happens when someone finally realizes they're not the smartest person in the room. She didn't say a word. She just stood there in the doorway in her robe, arms crossed, breathing shallow. You listened to it, I said without turning around. She hesitated. You recorded that just to what? Scare me? No, I said. To remind you. I'm not stupid. You just counted on me staying that way. She looked like she wanted to throw something, but she was too careful. Always calculating. Always aware of optics. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply sat at the counter and asked, "What do you want, Colby?" There it was. Not an apology. A negotiation. That's what she was always good at. Turning disasters into deals. Making betrayal seem like an unfortunate misunderstanding. I swear, if she cheated during the apocalypse, she'd still find a way to come out of the rubble with a new brand partnership. I didn't answer. Instead, I placed my phone on the table, unlocked it, and slid it across to her. She looked down and saw the post, the scheduled one, sitting in my drafts, ready to go live on her birthday. I watched her eyes scan the screen. The photo montage, the text overlay, the voice clip. She reached for it. I pulled it back. You try to delete it, I said. I publish it manually. Her jaw tightened. You think humiliating me publicly will make you feel better? She spat. No, I said. But it'll make us even. She slammed her palm on the counter. This isn't a revenge movie, Colby. Grow up. I smiled. No, it's not a movie. Movies have closure. This is real life. Messy, unresolved, and full of people pretending they didn't break the one person who actually cared about them. She stood abruptly. Her chair scraped hard against the tile. I'm leaving, she said. Already packed your bag, I replied. That stopped her. She looked toward the hallway, toward the closet, then back at me. You went through my things. I stood up slowly, walked past her without answering, opened the front hall closet, and pulled out the small duffel she used for weekend trips. Placed it gently on the floor near her feet. You were going to leave anyway, I said. Might as well save you the performance. She stared at the bag. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying her otherwise sculpted mask. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Maybe call Ash. Or the guy from the Boise trip. Or the mystery one from the photo in Prague. You have options. She didn't even ask how I knew about Prague. Maybe she forgot about that trip. Maybe she didn't realize the timestamp gave it away. Or maybe she knew the game was already lost. She picked up the bag, but didn't move. You think this makes you strong? She asked. You think this makes you the better person? I walked over to the table, opened my laptop, and pressed one key. The post disappeared from the queue. She saw it. You're not the villain, I said. You're just not the hero you pretend to be. And me? I'm just the guy who finally stopped asking for a role in your show. She stood there for a moment longer, then opened the door and left. No goodbye, no apology, no final insult, just silence. But here's the thing. I didn't delete the video. I just moved it to a different platform, one she doesn't know about. Because this isn't over. Not yet. 2 days after Rosalie left, I woke up to the sound of my inbox vibrating against the nightstand. Not the usual spam. Not the chain of sorry to see you go emails from therapists I never replied to. No, this one was from Ash. Subject line, what exactly do you want? The message was short, cold, calculated. The kind of thing a man sends when he doesn't realize he's already lost. Rosalie says you're having a breakdown. She told me you're unstable and trying to ruin reputations. I don't know what your goal is, but I'd appreciate it if you kept my name out of whatever game this is. For everyone's sake. For everyone's sake. I reread that phrase 4 times. That's the tone people use when they still believe they hold the high ground. When they think they're dealing with the same weak version of you who once stood quietly in the shadows while they flirted with your wife across a ballroom floor. Ash didn't know. He didn't know I'd already spoken to his ex-girlfriend. Didn't know I'd tracked her down using a tagged location he forgot to hide on a photo from 2022. Didn't know I'd heard her say the words, "He always chooses women in crisis." It makes him feel like the rescuer. He didn't know I had screenshots, a pattern, dates. So I replied, I'm not ruining reputations, Ash. I'm handing them back to their owners. Whatever they choose to do with them after that is none of my concern. And I attached a link, not to the original video, not to the voicemail, but to a Google Drive folder titled Reflections. Inside, neatly organized evidence, messages, photos, a PDF summary, voice memos transcribed and annotated, a digital museum of betrayal. I didn't threaten him. I didn't even ask him to confess. I just added one final line. You can forward this to Rosalie, or you can forward it to your HR department. Entirely your call. I hit send. 15 minutes later, I received a read receipt. 20 after that, he blocked me. That's when I knew it had worked. But this wasn't just about Ash. He was just the accessory to a crime Rosalie had been committing for years, with a polite smile and a pair of heels that clicked like a ticking clock every time she walked away from the truth. Now it was time to dismantle her stage. Because Rosalie wasn't just someone's wife. She was a public figure in her field. She had a professional website, a podcast about emotional integrity, and a speaking tour scheduled for next spring, sponsored by the same hospital where she manipulated patients and therapists and coworkers into believing she was the lighthouse in the storm. I drafted an anonymous submission for one of her sponsors, an ethics committee that regularly reviewed professionals with public licenses. I didn't accuse her of anything. I simply submitted inconsistencies between her social media image and her client treatment history, like one patient testimonial that mysteriously matched word for word with a paragraph from another, only the name was different. Alongside the email, I included a link to one of the audio files from her session logs folder. Not all of it, just enough. Enough to trigger a review. Then I visited her website. She still hadn't changed her password. I updated her about page. Subtly, one sentence. I believe honesty is more than a virtue. It's a discipline we must apply in both professional and personal relationships. I didn't lie. I just sharpened the truth. Later that night, I went back to the scheduled video. It was still queued, still ready, but I didn't post it. Not yet. Instead, I published something else. A blog post. Under my name. No drama. No accusations. Just a story. About a man who stayed too quiet. Too long. A man who mistook tolerance for kindness. Who gave someone all the space in the world, only to realize they were using it to cheat, manipulate, and lie. It wasn't viral, but it was read. By the next morning, I had 15 DMs from strangers. 12 of them from women. 3 from men who said, I think I'm going through the same thing. One even added, thank you for not shouting. That's what makes it louder. That same day, Rosalie called. I didn't answer. She called again, then texted, then emailed. I saw what you did. You're trying to destroy me. I hope you're proud. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just panic dressed up as anger. And in that moment, for the first time since the ball, I felt something unexpected. Not revenge. Not even closure. Just calm. Because even though the war wasn't over, she finally understood. I was no longer the man waiting at the chocolate fountain, pretending not to see. I had become the one setting the table. And she was now the one waiting to be served. 3 weeks passed. 3 full weeks since she walked out with that duffel bag and the fake confidence of someone who thinks the story is still about them. Since then, I hadn't responded to her texts, calls, voicemails, or guilt trap emails labeled, we need to talk, or I still have the key. She didn't return it, by the way, the key. But it didn't matter. I had the locks changed on day 2. I didn't hear anything from Ash either. But I didn't need to. The message was sent. Loud enough for him to hear it through the silence. For the first time in years, my home felt like mine. No more echoes of gaslighting. No more careful tiptoeing around her moods. No more feeling like I had to earn peace just for existing. The video? I deleted it. Not out of mercy. Out of power. Because I realized something. Letting her live with the fear of its release was more effective than the release itself. Like a loaded gun she could see across the room, but never know if it had a bullet in the chamber. Control used to be her language. Now she was fluent in doubt. But I didn't just stop there. I didn't just get revenge. I rebuilt. Quietly. I used the same skills I'd used to organize evidence, research, structure, timing, to start something I hadn't dared attempt since I was in my 20s. A small blog. Nothing flashy. Just a digital journal for the invisible ones. That's what I called them. Men and women who didn't scream when they were betrayed, who didn't destroy things or post cryptic quotes on Instagram, who just kept going, quietly, bitterly, alone. But we weren't alone anymore. The blog took off. People shared their stories, sent long messages. Some were heartbreaking, some were hilarious, some were filled with raw truth that made me sit in silence for minutes after reading. I turned the best ones into a podcast, called it, "You Were Wrong About Me." And suddenly, for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt useful again. Not as a prop in someone else's life, not as a footnote, but as someone rebuilding from the ashes without needing to burn everything else down. Then one day, about a month after her last email, Rosalie showed up. I was watering the sad patch of grass in the front yard, wearing gym shorts and an old hoodie, looking like someone who had finally stopped caring about appearances in the best possible way. She pulled up in her black SUV and stepped out in heels like she was walking into a boardroom. "Colby," she said softly. I didn't move. "I heard about the blog," she added. "It's actually really good." I didn't say thank you. She shifted, adjusted her purse strap. "I was hoping maybe, eventually, we could talk about how we got here." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. Not cold, not cruel, just honest. "We didn't get here, Rosalie," I said. "You did. I just stopped following." Her face dropped. I walked past her and back toward the house. "I left your things in a box by the door," I added without looking back. "You can grab them if you want." I didn't slam the door when I went inside. I didn't watch through the blinds. And I didn't wait to see if she cried. Instead, I brewed some coffee, sat at my desk, logged into the podcast dashboard, and hit publish on a new episode. Title: Sometimes winning is just walking away without explaining yourself. Because in the end, the final message wasn't for her. It was for me. And I heard it loud and clear.